In that legendary supergroup, the Eight Immortals, if you had to pick a CEO, it would absolutely be Han Zhong-li. He's the cheerful one, right? Big belly, shirt wide open, always has that massive fan. He looks like absolutely nothing in the world could ever bother him. But the real question is, how did a decorated general, after a catastrophic failure, turn into this guy?
Okay, so his story starts with a bang. Literally. Those were the first words he ever spoke. And get this, he wasn't some wise old sage when he said it. He was a 7-day-old baby. After a full week of total silence, he just shouts this out. He's basically telling his parents, hey, just a heads up, I'm kind of a big deal up in the immortal world. Yeah, this was definitely no ordinary kid.
I mean, his whole arrival was a total spectacle right from the get-go. The story goes that on the day he was born, the room just filled up with these mysterious fiery lights. They were so bright that the neighbors thought the house was on fire and came running with buckets of water. Can you imagine their surprise when they find out it's just a very flashy baby announcement?
And it wasn't just his actions that set him apart. He looked the part from day one. His appearance was anything but average. We're talking a super wide forehead, a high nose, ears that actually touched his shoulders, and these incredibly intense dark eyes. He was basically born with the features of a sage, marking him for a destiny that was way, way beyond the norm.
But here's the thing. His path to enlightenment was not a straight line. Not at all. Before he was an immortal, he was a man of action. A very highly respected military leader known as the Great Han General. He did everything right, followed the conventional path to success, climbed the ranks, and earned this amazing reputation as a brilliant commander.
And just look at this contrast here. It really shows you the dizzying speed of his fall from grace. He was leading this huge campaign, and his own subordinate betrays him. The result? His army is completely annihilated. So one day he's the celebrated general, and the very next he's a lone fugitive in busted armor riding a skinny horse into the middle of nowhere. It's basically the ancient world's version of a total midlife collapse. Unemployment, bankruptcy, total defeat.
So this wasn't just a military loss. It was a full-blown existential crisis. All alone in these deep mountains, stripped of his rank, his army, his pride, he's forced to ask himself the biggest question of all. Everything he'd built, everything he'd fought for, it all vanished in an instant. What was the point? What was it all for?
And just when he was completely lost, just about to give up, a mysterious monk appears, seemingly out of nowhere. This strange guy seemed to know exactly who he was and where he needed to go. He was like a divine guide, there to lead him from the wreckage of his old life right into the beginning of his true destiny.
So this monk leads him to the doorstep of a true master, the great immortal Donghua Dijon. And Donghua could see that Han Zhongli was ready for a new path. So he taught him the 3 core classes for immortality, if you will. He learned the secrets to a long life, the mystical art of alchemy, and a powerful new sword technique. He basically traded his general's blade for a sage's power.
Now, armed with all this new knowledge, Han Zhong-li's transformation was pretty much complete. He got a signature magical item, he developed a really unique teaching style, and he even took on a student who would go on to become even more famous than he was.
Let's talk about that fan. It is anything but ordinary. It's a seriously powerful artifact with some incredible abilities. With just one wave, he could bring the dead back to life. With another, he could conjure gold or fine wine right out of thin air. And if you got into a fight, a third wave could unleash a wall of fire and incinerate any demons that got in his way. Not bad, right?
And this story right here is a perfect example of his wisdom as a teacher. To enlighten his super ambitious student, Lu Dongbin, he worked a little magic. As a pot of millet was cooking, Lu Dongbin dozed off and dreamt an entire 50-year life. Success, power, betrayal, tragic failure, the whole shebang. He wakes up with a jolt, only to realize the rice isn't even done cooking yet. The lesson was so profound. 50 years of worldly ambition and struggle are as fleeting as a quick nap.
Which brings us to his most iconic feature. In almost every picture you see of Han Zhong-li, his robe is wide open and he's proudly showing off this massive belly. So why would an enlightened immortal, a master of self-discipline, look like this? Well, believe it or not, that belly is packed with meaning.
His belly actually symbolizes 3 key Taoist ideas. First, it represents his immense inner power, that inner elixir that Taoists work to cultivate. Second, its size signifies broad-mindedness, a capacity to just tolerate all the troubles of the world. And finally, it shows his spiritual freedom. He is so far beyond worldly concerns that something as trivial as buttoning up a shirt, he just doesn't care.
So what this all really comes down to is that Han Zhongli's story isn't just some ancient myth. It's a timeless and frankly pretty inspiring story of a successful transformation. He went from the absolute peak of worldly success to the rock bottom, and it was only there, in that failure, that he found his true self.
His journey really shows us that a devastating setback doesn't have to be the end of the road. In fact, sometimes hitting rock bottom is the one thing that clears away all the noise and forces you to discover a more profound, more authentic, maybe even an immortal purpose for your life.
In the end, Han Zhongli leaves us with this piece of just wonderfully cheerful wisdom. His carefree attitude, which is perfectly symbolized by that ever-present fan, suggests a pretty simple approach to all of life's many troubles. Just let him go.
So the next time you see that image of the happy, fan-waving immortal with the big belly, remember the journey he took to get there. He's a reminder that even after the worst defeat imaginable, you can find a new path. And that maybe, just maybe, most of our problems can be solved if we just learn to laugh, take a deep breath, and give them a good wave of the fan.